What do you think of? You might be thinking of something related to Formula 1, or it could be a World Rally Championship or NASCAR, or more importantly, the kart races that you tend to get. Things like Mario Kart and the Sega All-Stars Racing series. They're all good, they're all great. But there's one extra one which has a little place in my heart, and so I'd like to share with you all the different versions that were available at the time. I suppose we'd better start with the name of the game, and that is WEC Le Mans 24. As you can pretty much figure out from the title, it's based on the Le Mans 24-hour race, and it was developed by Konami in 1986 using the official Le Mans 24-hour race license. The arcade cabinet used a semi-automatic gearbox, which in this emulator we have to use a little box on the screen to see what gear you're in, and it also used the steering wheel. The time limits are horrible. They are very small, even when you set the difficulty in the BIOS to easy. Because this is a game that requires a steering wheel, if you're going to use your normal methods of control like a joypad or a keyboard, you're going to be in a whole heap of difficulty, just as much as I did, crashing into the signs, crashing into the cars, or generally just skidding all about the track. There's digitised speech in this game, and it's of a decent quality. You can hear what the person's saying. The issue is that some of the things he says, or even the way he says it, can be quite confusing. Examples of this include, "Go on to the next series,"
Go on to the next series.
and "There's the checkered flag."
There's the checkered flag.
All those pauses making it seem like he's uncertain whether you finished or not. There's decent music for the time. I mean, it's really getting the heart pumping. But the problem is it's far too difficult to actually get into the music, as the sound effects dominate far too much. This separates you from the thrill experience of racing in the Le Mans 24-hour. Of course, being a 24-hour race, the graphics and the environment change colour to denote daylight, dusk, evening and dawn. However, there's no real sense of darkness, with night time looking more like 9 PM in the summertime. You'll notice that to add to the authentic experience, there's advertising from real companies. Companies like Michelin, BP, Lucas, Ford and Total. As well as Solid Snake's favourite cigarettes, Lucky Strike. For a Konami game, this would make what I just said a very interesting fact. Scoring is 20 points for every set distance on low gear and 80 points on high gear. You still score even when you're in the midst of crashing in any of those spectacular over-the-top crash fashions that this game has.
Uh-oh.
After 4 laps, the sky suddenly goes from an overcast gloom to twilight, the Tifosi run over to dismantle your car to sell on eBay, and the 90s children's TV presenter Andy Crane gets a kiss on the cheek. Okay, that's the original arcade version of WEC Le Mans 24. Next up we'll look at each of the home versions in turn, starting with the ZX Spectrum.
There's the checkered flag. Start your engine.
And here it is. WEC Le Mans, without a 24, was ported to the Speccy in 1988 by Imagine, who had by then become Ocean Software's bitch. Sorry, budget shovelware provider. That's a better way of putting it. Of course, you're not going to get arcade quality results on the ZX Spectrum, but one would anticipate a good effort anyway. The limitations of a ZX Spectrum, with its piezoelectric beeper and a very limited colour palette, offers a poor home version, with a grating title tune and a mediocre game over tune being the only sounds provided. All the same, a sense of depth is attempted, with the background scrolling, rising and falling as you progress through the track. Sadly, this is not the case with the sky, which also fails to change colour as a result of the limited colour palette. That said, the frame rate is decent, and the signage, stripped of sponsorship, is plenty. As you expect, attribute clash dampens any hopes of a perfect animation. A version was developed by Sentient Software for the MSX, which makes proper use of its sound chip and improved colour palette. However, for the most part, it's a straight port of the ZX Spectrum version, but without the attribute clash. Well, I say that, they didn't bother to sort it out for the car. Proof that the two versions are identical come from the lack of scrolling in the sky, and the lap clock resetting 4 seconds prematurely. The title music is pleasant though, however the engine noise will really get on your wick after a short period of time. Scoring is 60 points for every 1/5 of a second in low gear and every 1/10 of a second in high gear, so long you're in the race and so long you're moving. Collision detection is good enough to allow for the shortest of near misses, and while the time limits are more lax, only the most skilled will progress past the first lap. So what happens when you complete 4 laps in this version? It's time to turn the tape over and load up the victory ceremony. The Tifosi again mob you, but instead of a children's TV presenter, you now have a Picasso painting. Finished with that victory ceremony? Well, time to start the tape up again for the high score table. The ZX Spectrum 128 and MSX versions don't suffer from this tape loading requirement, but you do get a rather creepy sound to your victory ceremony. The Amstrad CPC version was also developed in 1988 by Imagine, and in terms of sound is exactly the same as the MSX and Spectrum 128 versions. This is due to the similar sound chip in those 3 systems. Graphically, there are differences. In the battle between colour and resolution, the developers chose the quality route, with the Mode 1 graphics offering a 4-colour palette. However, programming tricks have been done to double this number for the sake of the scoreboard. The welcome addition of green means that the edges of a track are aesthetically appropriate. The animation of a car is somewhat better than the Spectrum version, as is the scrolling of the city in the background, although minor details in the scenery suffer from a lack of polish. The sky is missing its clouds, and there's still no change in the sky's colour as we progress. Advertising makes a return, with BP and Ocean Software. The collision detection works well, such that you can have as shallow as a fact paper between you and anything else, and not suffer from a crash. However, the high score table has been replaced with a single entry, plus the scoring is different. 30 points for every 1/5 of a second that you're in low gear and every 1/10 of a second you're in high gear, so long you're in the race and not stationary. However, this ultimately means that you will never ever reach the default high score. One interesting feature is the game memorising where cars have crashed on the track, meaning that you will revisit them on each lap. Whilst this is a good touch, it makes a game with a difficult time limit turn into a slalom with an ungenerous time extension. This is exacerbated by the increase in the number of cars on the track as you complete each lap. It's a nice feature though, and very little slowdown is experienced as a result. When all 4 laps are complete, there is no tifosi, no kiss on the cheek, just you doing donuts on the track until you press fire. The Commodore 64 is known for its inferior graphics, but its sound chip and increased use of colour far make up for it. This is demonstrated before the game even starts by the loading screen, with Jonathan Dunn's Ocean Loader 4 being played. Even the title screen music has been spruced up for the Commodore 64 hardware. This more than makes up for the lack of a proper high score table, just like you see in the Spectrum and MSX versions. However, this is where the compliments end. The graphics are horrible. There's no difference between the track and what's supposed to be the grass. The screen shudders as you keep moving along, and woe betide if you go near the edge of a track. If you're not forced to slow down to a crawl, you'll hit a road sign that's actually intruding into the track. All versions up to now stop the clock after you've crashed to allow the car to get back onto the track. This one doesn't. The timer keeps ticking. The controls are stodgy one moment, and then they're slippery the next, in a poor simulation of G-force effects. The cars ahead of you start to move slowly, and then boosh! This version reminds me more of the Tomy Racing Turbo than a racing game.
Yes, it sort of wobbles left and right a bit as it goes round, and that's your lot. How quick can we go then? That 3rd gear or 4th gear, I can't tell. Ah, there's maximum speed. Whoa, hey, look at that. Oh, it's got stuck.
Scoring is purely arbitrary, based on how fast you can cover a specific distance. There are 2 major bugs that ruin this game all the more, one of which I couldn't replicate here, where cars from behind will continuously shunt you after you crash, and the effects you get from plugging the joystick in the wrong port. For reference purposes, that's meant to say start tape. Nothing like a good facial. Of course, if you want to play again, you'll need to turn the tape over and endure another 90 seconds of loading. In summary, load the game once, then record over the game code on the tape with the title screen music. So those are the home versions of WEC Le Mans 24. However, there's one unofficial version that holds a place in my heart. One that's just a little bit better. Actually, a lot better. WEC Le Mans 24 was resurrected 2 years later.